What if I told you you are not broken, not too emotional, not too anxious, not too behind, not too damaged? What if the reason you keep repeating the same patterns in love, in money, in habits, in self-sabotage has nothing to do with weakness and everything to do with conditioning? Because here's the truth most people never hear. You are not stuck. You are patterned. Somewhere along the way, you learned who you had to be to survive. Maybe you became the achiever. Maybe you became the caretaker. Maybe you became invisible. Maybe you became hyper independent. Maybe you became the strong one, and those identities protected you. But what once protected you may now be limiting you. Why do you react before you think? Why do you shut down in conflict? Why do you overwork but still feel unsafe? Why do you want financial freedom but panic when it's time to take a risk? Because your body remembers what your mind has normalized. Your nervous system is still operating from old survival codes. You don't procrastinate because you're lazy. If something about expansion feels unsafe, you don't overspend because you lack discipline. You overspend because your body is seeking relief. You don't people please because you're weak. You people please because belonging once meant survival. And until you understand this, you will keep trying to fix yourself with motivation. But this is not a motivation problem. It's a regulation problem. It's a subconscious blueprint problem. It's an inner child still waiting for safety problem. And here's the shift that changes everything. You cannot build a regulated, abundant, secure life from a dysregulated nervous system. You cannot create wealth while your body associates money with danger. You cannot build healthy love while your inner child fears abandonment. You cannot sustain discipline while your subconscious believes rest equals rejection. The life you want requires a version of you that feels safe holding it. And that version is not created in a breakthrough, it's created in small daily decisions, the pause before the reaction. The boundary you hold, the breath you take instead of exploding, the dollar you invest instead of impulsively spending, the no you say without over-explaining. That is where power lives. Not in perfection and awareness. Because the moment you realize, I am not reacting to the present, I am reacting to a past imprint, you reclaim choice. And choice is freedom. This is not about becoming someone new. It's about becoming conscious. It's about meeting the inner child who adapted. Regulating the nervous system that protected you. Rewriting the ego story that limited you. Setting boundaries that rebuild self-trust. And stepping into financial and emotional sovereignty. You are not here to survive anymore. You are here to lead yourself. And once you learn how to feel safe within your own body, everything changes. Take a breath with me, not a shallow breath, not the kind you take while scrolling your phone or thinking about the next thing on your to-do list. A real breath. Inhale slowly and exhale fully and exhale fully. Now I want you to notice something. You are here because something inside of you knows there is more peace, more clarity, more alignment, more freedom. And I want to begin with a truth that might feel both comforting and confronting at the same time. You are not broken. You are patterned. Most of us have spent our lives believing that something is wrong with us. We believe we are too anxious, too emotional, too reactive, too sensitive, too needy, too ambitious, too much, or not enough. And when we can't sustain change, when we promise ourselves we'll wake up earlier, eat better, stop texting that person, set that boundary, start that business, invest that money, heal that wound, and then we fall back into old habits. We make it mean something about who we are. We say, see, I lack discipline. I lack motivation. I lack willpower. Just can't change, but here's what I need you to understand. Your inability to change is not a character flaw. It is a nervous system pattern. Your habits are not moral failures. They are survival adaptations. And survival adaptations are brilliant. Every coping mechanism you have, procrastination, overworking, people-pleasing, emotional numbing, perfectionism, overspending, underselling yourself, avoiding difficult conversations, once protected you. At some point in your life, they worked. They kept you safe. They kept you loved. They kept you connected. They kept you from feeling something overwhelming. But what once protected you may now be limiting you. And the work, the real work, begins when we become conscious of that, not ashamed, conscious, because awareness is power. And here's one of the most important principles I will share with you today. You cannot change what you are not aware of. Most of us are living on autopilot. We wake up and immediately start thinking. We think about what we have to do. We think about what we didn't do. We think about what someone said. We think about what might go wrong. And those thoughts trigger emotions. And those emotions trigger behaviors. And those behaviors reinforce the same outcomes. And then we call that a personality. But personality is often just a collection of practice patterns. Let me say that again. Personality is often just a collection of practice patterns. You were not born insecure. You were not born reactive. You were not born financially fearful. You were not born doubting your worth. You learned, you adapted, you observed, you absorbed. And because those patterns were practiced repeatedly, especially in childhood, they became automatic. Automatic feels permanent. But automatic is just unconscious repetition. And what is practiced can be repracticed differently. This is where your power lives. Not in waiting for someone to fix you. Not in hoping the right relationship will heal you. Not in believing a certain income bracket will finally make you feel safe. Your power lives in your daily choices, small ones, repeated ones. Because healing is not a one-time breakthrough. It is a daily event. We love the idea of the breakthrough, the retreat, the ceremony, the moment of clarity, the rock bottom transformation. And those moments matter, but insight without integration changes nothing. You can have the most profound realization of your life on Sunday, and by Thursday be reacting the same way you always have. Why? Because insight does not rewire patterns. Repetition does, and repetition requires consciousness. This is the shift from victimhood to empowerment. Now let's be very clear. Acknowledging your power is not blaming yourself for your pain. Many of you have experienced trauma, some of it obvious. Some of it subtle, some of it woven into systems and environments you didn't choose. The work is not about denying that. The work is about recognizing that while you were not responsible for what happened to you, you were responsible for your healing. And responsibility is not punishment. Responsibility is freedom, because if someone else is responsible for your healing, you have to wait. And waiting keeps you powerless. But when you say, my healing is in my hands, something shifts, even if you don't know how yet, even if you feel overwhelmed, even if you doubt yourself. That declaration alone begins rewiring your identity. Here's a truth that may challenge you. We often cling to familiar suffering because it feels predictable. The nervous system prefers familiar pain over unfamiliar freedom. Let that sink in. Familiar pain feels safe because we know it. Unfamiliar freedom feels risky because it requires expansion. If you grew up in chaos, calm may feel boring or suspicious. If you grew up having to earn love through achievement, rest may feel wrong. If money was scarce or unstable, financial growth may feel unsafe, even if you consciously desire it. Your nervous system does not prioritize happiness. It prioritizes survival. And survival is based on the past. So when you attempt to change, start a new habit, set a boundary, raise your prices, leave a toxic dynamic, your body may react as if you are in danger. You might feel tired. You might feel anxious. You might suddenly forget. You might talk yourself out of it. And then you shame yourself. But what if instead of shaming yourself, you got curious? What if you asked, what part of me feels unsafe right now? What is this behavior protecting me from? Curiosity opens the door to consciousness, and consciousness opens the door to choice. You are not your thoughts. You are the observer of your thoughts, and this distinction changes everything. Right now, as you listen, there may be a voice commenting, "This sounds good, but I've tried before. This won't work for me. I don't have time. It's too late." That voice is not you. It is a practice narrative. It is a protective story. And stories can be rewritten, but not by force, by awareness. Here is one of my favorite reminders. Awareness without judgment is the beginning of transformation. When you notice yourself procrastinating, instead of saying, "I'm lazy," you say, "I notice I'm avoiding." When you overspend, instead of saying, "I'm irresponsible," you say, "I notice I'm seeking comfort." When you overwork, instead of saying, "I'm obsessed," you say, "I notice I equate worth with productivity." This is how you become your own healer, not by perfection, but by presence. Now I want to introduce something that might surprise you. Healing is directly connected to your capacity for financial freedom. Because money is not just numbers. Money is nervous system safety. If your body equates risk with danger, you will sabotage growth. If your subconscious believes wealth leads to rejection, you will shrink. If you learn that wanting more is selfish, you will under-earn. Financial freedom is not just strategy. It is emotional regulation. It is boundary setting. It is self-trust. It is the ability to tolerate expansion. And expansion requires safety. When you learn to regulate your nervous system, when you learn to sit with discomfort without collapsing, when you learn to keep small promises to yourself, you build self-trust. And self-trust is wealth. Because when you trust yourself, you take aligned risks. You invest, you create, you negotiate, you say no, you say yes, you stop abandoning yourself for approval. And that changes everything. But it doesn't happen overnight. It happens in micro moments. The glass of water you promised yourself, you drink. The 5 minutes of silence you keep. The boundary you hold once. The impulse you pause before acting on. These small acts send a powerful message to your nervous system. I am safe to choose differently. And every time you keep a small promise to yourself, you rebuild something that may have been fractured long ago. Trust. Here is a quote I want you to carry with you. Self-trust is built in the quiet moments when no one is watching. Not when you achieve something impressive, not when you receive validation, but when you choose alignment in the smallest ways. The work begins with awareness. It deepens with responsibility. It transforms through repetition, and it stabilizes through compassion. You are not here to become someone new. You are here to remember who you were before you learned you weren't enough. And that remembering requires courage, because to wake up is to see your patterns, to see your conditioning, to see how you've participated in your own stuckness, but also to see your power. And I promise you this, once you see it, you cannot unsee it. This is the awakening, not dramatic, not mystical, but steady. A quiet shift from unconscious to conscious living, from reacting to choosing, from blaming to building, from surviving to creating. And as we move into the next part of this journey, we will go deeper. We will explore how your childhood shaped your nervous system, how trauma lives in the body, how subconscious patterns drive your relationships, how emotional maturity becomes the gateway to true interdependence, and how all of this connects to the life and freedom you desire. For now, I want you to leave with this. You are not broken. You are patterned, and patterns can change. Take another breath. Notice that you are here, and understand this. The moment you become aware, the work has already begun. Take another breath with me, because now we're going deeper. In part 1, we talked about awareness, about how you are not broken, you are patterned. Now we need to understand something even more powerful. Your patterns were formed long before you knew you were forming them. Most of your daily behaviors are not conscious decisions. They are subconscious programs, and the subconscious mind is not logical. It is not rational. It is not future-focused. It is protective. By the age of 7, the majority of your subconscious blueprint was already installed. Installed by observation, installed by repetition, installed by emotional experiences. You didn't choose it, you absorbed it. As children, we are in a highly suggestible brainwave state. We are watching, we are listening, we are interpreting. We are asking silent questions like, what do I need to do to be loved here? What do I need to do to be safe? What do I need to do to belong? And whatever worked, we repeated. If being quiet kept you from conflict, you became the quiet one. If achieving earned you praise, you became the achiever. If caretaking kept a parent emotionally regulated, you became the caretaker. If staying invisible kept you safe, you learned to shrink. Children do not question their environment. They adapt to it. And adaptation becomes identity. This is the subconscious blueprint. And here's the part most people don't realize. The subconscious does not know the difference between past and present. If something felt unsafe when you were 6, your body may still react to it as unsafe at 36. A tone of voice, a facial expression, a delayed text message, a financial risk, a disagreement. Your body reacts first, your mind explains later. Let me say that again. Your body reacts first, your mind explains later. This is why logic alone doesn't change behavior. You can logically know that your partner isn't abandoning you. But if abandonment was imprinted in childhood, your nervous system may panic anyway. You can logically know that investing in your business is a smart move. But if money felt unstable growing up, your body may tighten and resist. You can logically know you deserve more. But if your blueprint says wanting more leads to rejection, you will unconsciously sabotage expansion. This is not weakness, this is conditioning, and conditioning can be reconditioned. But first, we must see it clearly. Let's talk about trauma for a moment, because trauma is often misunderstood. Trauma is not only catastrophic events. Trauma is anything that overwhelmed your nervous system and left you without adequate support to process it. It could be emotional neglect. It could be chronic criticism. It could be unpredictability. It could be growing up in a home where emotions were not welcomed. It could be witnessing financial stress every day. It could be being praised only when you performed. Trauma is not defined by the event. It is defined by the impact. And when trauma is unprocessed, it lives in the body. It lives in muscle tension, in shallow breathing, in hypervigilance, in people-pleasing, in emotional shutdown, in chronic overworking, in impulsive spending, in perfectionism. Trauma shapes your relationship with safety, and safety shapes your ability to expand. If your nervous system is in survival mode, growth feels threatening. Because survival mode is not concerned with thriving, it is concerned with avoiding danger. And many of us are functioning adults with nervous systems that are still scanning for childhood threats. This is why you can be successful and still feel unsafe. You can have money and still fear losing it. I have money and still fear losing it. You can be loved and still fear abandonment. You can achieve and still feel inadequate. Because the subconscious blueprint has not been updated. Here is one of the most important truths of this work. You will not outperform your subconscious self-image. If deep down you believe you are not worthy, you will cap your success. If deep down you believe you are too much, you will silence yourself. If deep down you believe you are not capable, you will hesitate. And here's the part that requires courage. Your subconscious self-image was not created by you alone. It was shaped by the environment you grew up in. The beliefs your caregivers held about themselves, the way they handled conflict, the way they handled money, the way they handled stress, the way they handled emotions. Children don't just inherit eye color, they inherit emotional patterns. If you grew up in a household where money caused tension, your body may associate wealth with conflict. If you grew up watching someone overwork and burn out, you may associate success with exhaustion. If you grew up with inconsistency, you may crave chaos because it feels familiar. Familiar does not mean healthy. Familiar means practice. And here's a quote I want you to sit with. Your nervous system loves what it knows, even when what it knows is hurting you. This is why change feels uncomfortable, not because it's wrong, but because it's unfamiliar. The subconscious mind equates unfamiliar with unsafe. So when you try to break a pattern, resistance shows up. You feel tired, you feel distracted, you feel doubtful, you feel pulled back, and instead of recognizing this as a protective response, you interpret it as failure. But resistance is not failure. Resistance is your nervous system asking for reassurance. This is where compassion enters the work. Not indulgence, not avoidance. Compassion. When you react strongly, instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" you ask, "What younger part of me feels threatened right now?" Because many of your adult reactions are younger emotional imprints. When someone doesn't text back and you feel panic, that may not be about the present moment. When you hesitate to raise your prices, that may not be about market conditions. When you shut down in conflict, that may not be about the current conversation. It may be about a younger version of you who learned that safety required a specific behavior. This is why we cannot bypass the subconscious work. We cannot affirm our way out of conditioning. We cannot hustle our way out of nervous system dysregulation. We cannot logic our way out of trauma. We must gently rewire, and rewiring happens through three things: awareness, regulation, repetition. Awareness allows you to see the pattern. Regulation allows your body to feel safe enough to choose differently. Repetition installs the new pattern. This applies to relationships. It applies to emotional healing. And it absolutely applies to financial freedom. Let's talk about money for a moment. Your relationship with money is emotional before it is strategic. If money represented stress, arguments, or instability in childhood, your body may react to financial growth with tension. If wealth was criticized or judged, you may unconsciously avoid earning more. If you were taught that security only comes from external authority, you may fear self-leadership. Financial freedom is not just about increasing income. It is about increasing your nervous system's capacity to hold abundance. and capacity expands through safety. You build safety when you keep promises to yourself, when you regulate before reacting, when you pause before abandoning yourself, when you sit with discomfort without collapsing. This is self-leadership, and self-leadership is the foundation of both emotional maturity and financial empowerment. Here is a quote I want you to remember. A freedom is not the absence of fear. It is the capacity to move forward while feeling it. Your subconscious will not disappear overnight. It will not stop protecting you. But you can become the conscious leader of your internal world. Instead of letting old programs drive your decisions, you begin observing them. You say, I notice I'm wanting to shut down. I notice I'm wanting to overspend. I notice I'm wanting to avoid. I notice I'm wanting to overwork. And in that noticing, you create space. Space between impulse and action. Space between trigger and reaction. Space between past and present. And in that space, there is power. Because when you pause, even for 3 seconds, you are no longer fully unconscious. You are choosing. This is the beginning of rewriting your blueprint. Not by fighting your past, but by understanding it. Not by shaming your coping mechanisms, but by honoring what they once protected. And then gently telling yourself, I am safe now, because most patterns persist not because they are needed, but because they were never updated. You are not sick anymore. You are not powerless anymore. You are not trapped in that environment anymore. But your body may not know that yet, and your job is to teach it through consistency, through compassion, through conscious repetition. This is how the subconscious shifts slowly, steadily, intentionally. And in part 3, we will go even deeper into the body itself, how trauma lives in the nervous system, how dysregulation keeps you stuck, and how to begin creating internal safety so transformation becomes sustainable. For now, sit with this. You are not reacting to the present moment. You are reacting to a memory your body has not yet released, and awareness is the first step toward release. Take a slow breath. Place one hand on your chest, one hand on your stomach, and just notice. Notice the rise, notice the fall. Now ask yourself something gently. When was the last time I truly felt safe in my body? Not distracted, not productive, not performing, not numbed. Safe? For many of us, that question brings silence. Because we have learned to live in our heads, we analyze, we plan, we strategize, we overthink. But the body has been speaking the entire time. And if you want to change your life, your relationships, your habits, your financial reality, you cannot bypass the body, because the body is where survival lives. Let's talk about your nervous system. Your nervous system has one primary job: keep you alive, not happy, not fulfilled, not wealthy, alive. And it does this by constantly scanning your environment for cues of safety or danger. This happens beneath your conscious awareness. Every facial expression, every tone shift, every unexpected bill, every difficult email, every uncomfortable conversation. Your body scans and asks, am I safe? If the answer is yes, your system relaxes. You feel grounded, creative, open, connected. If the answer is no, your system mobilizes. And mobilization shows up in different ways. Fight, flight, freeze, fawn. Fight looks like irritability, control, anger, defensiveness. Flight looks like anxiety, overworking, perfectionism, constant busyness. Freeze looks like procrastination, brain fog, disconnection, numbness. Fawn looks like people-pleasing, overgiving, abandoning your needs to maintain harmony. These are not personality flaws, they are survival states. And many of us are living in chronic low-grade survival. We wake up already bracing, already tense, already scanning. Because at some point in life, unpredictability was real. Maybe emotions were explosive. Maybe love felt conditional. Maybe money was unstable. Maybe criticism was constant. Maybe silence meant danger. So your nervous system adapted. Here is the problem. You cannot create a regulated, abundant, connected life from a dysregulated nervous system. You cannot build sustainable wealth while your body feels unsafe holding it. You cannot create secure relationships while your system expects abandonment. You cannot break habits while your nervous system believes those habits equal survival. This is why willpower fails, because willpower lives in the conscious mind. Survival lives in the body, and the body always wins. So the question becomes, how do we create safety inside ourselves? First, we stop fighting our nervous system. We stop shaming our responses. Instead of saying, why am I like this? We say, of course my body learned this. Of course you overwork if slowing down once meant vulnerability. Of course you overspend if money once equaled emotional relief. Of course you shut down if expressing yourself once led to rejection. Your body is not broken. It is loyal. Loyal to the version of you that needed protection. Now, here is one of the most powerful truths of this work. Your nervous system cannot heal in the same environment that taught it to survive. Oh, that environment may not be physical anymore. It may be internal. It may be the constant self-criticism, the relentless productivity, the comparison, the overexposure to stimulation, the lack of boundaries. Safety is not created by circumstances alone. It is created by regulation. Regulation means your body can move through stress and return to baseline, because stress itself is not the enemy. Chronic dysregulation is. When you experience stress but never complete the cycle, never breathe deeply, never slow down, never discharge tension, your body stores it. Stored stress becomes chronic inflammation. Chronic inflammation impacts mood, energy, focus, hormones, sleep. This is why so many high-functioning adults feel exhausted. They are running on survival chemicals, adrenaline, cortisol. You can be successful and still be dysregulated. You can be wealthy and still be exhausted. You can be admired and still feel unsafe, because regulation is an internal practice. And here's where this becomes empowering. Regulation can be practiced. It is not reserved for monks or mystics. It is built in micro moments. A slow exhale. Pause before reacting. 5 minutes without stimulation. A boundary that protects your energy. A walk without your phone. A difficult conversation spoken calmly. These small acts tell your nervous system, we are safe. And over time, repetition rewires your baseline. This is also where financial freedom connects deeply to nervous system work, because money triggers survival, security, stability, status, power. If you grew up with scarcity, your body may equate money with anxiety. If you grew up with financial instability, you may unconsciously recreate chaos because calm feels unfamiliar. If you associate wealth with greed or disconnection, you may sabotage earning more. Financial growth requires nervous system capacity, capacity to hold risk, capacity to tolerate uncertainty, capacity to make decisions without panic. If your system collapses at the first sign of uncertainty, you will stay small, not because you lack skill, but because expansion feels unsafe. This is why emotional regulation is a wealth-building skill. It allows you to pause instead of impulse spending, negotiate without shutting down, invest without panic, create without self-sabotage, rest without guilt, lead without fear. Regulation builds resilience, and resilience builds freedom. Here's a quote I want you to remember. Regulation is the foundation of expansion. You cannot expand beyond the limits of your nervous system, so instead of asking, how do I force myself to grow? Ask, how do I make growth feel safer? And safety begins in the body. Let's talk practically. When you feel triggered, your heart races, your stomach tightens, your chest constricts. That is activation. Instead of immediately reacting, try this. Slow your exhale, longer out than in. This stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system, the part responsible for rest and safety. Place your feet firmly on the ground. Notice 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can feel physically. Bring yourself into the present, because trauma pulls you into the past. Anxiety pulls you into the future. Regulation brings you into now. And in now, you have choice. The more often you practice returning to now, the less power old triggers hold. Over time, you begin responding instead of reacting, and response is power. Let me share another truth. Healing is not becoming untriggered. Healing is shortening the distance between trigger and regulation. You will still feel. You will still be activated. You will still have moments of dysregulation. But instead of spiraling for hours or days, you return faster. And that return builds confidence. Confidence is not the absence of fear. It is trust in your ability to regulate through it. This is self-leadership. This is maturity. This is freedom. When your nervous system feels safer, you make clearer decisions. You choose aligned relationships. You tolerate growth discomfort. You stop abandoning yourself. And slowly, your baseline shifts. You wake up less braced. You breathe more fully. You move with more intention. The body begins to trust you. Because here's something most people never consider. For years, your body has been protecting you. But have you been protecting it? Have you been resting when tired, eating in a way that supports it, setting boundaries when overwhelmed, slowing down when activated? Or have you been pushing through? Healing requires partnership with your body, not dominance over it, not ignoring it. Partnership. Paya. And partnership is built through listening, the tight jaw, the clenched fists, the shallow breath, the racing thoughts. These are not inconveniences. They are signals. Your body whispers before it screams. And when you learn to listen to whispers, you prevent breakdowns. This is not just about emotional peace. This is about sustainable success. Because burnout is not a badge of honor. Burnout is nervous system collapse. True success includes regulation. True wealth includes health. True freedom includes internal safety. And this is where the real transformation begins. When your body feels safe enough, you no longer chase validation. You no longer react impulsively. You no longer shrink to maintain harmony. You no longer sabotage growth. You begin to build a life from grounded choice. And in part 4, we will move even deeper into the inner child, into the parts of you that first learn these patterns, into the process of reparenting and rebuilding self-trust at the root. But for now, remember this. Your body is not the enemy. It is the doorway to healing, the doorway to maturity, the doorway to financial empowerment, the doorway to freedom. Take one more breath, long exhale. You are not too much. You are not too sensitive. You are not incapable. You are learning safety, and safety changes everything. I want you to imagine something. Close your eyes for just a moment. Picture yourself as a child, not the version in a posed school photo, the real one, the one who felt deeply. The one who didn't yet know how to hide disappointment, the one who wanted reassurance, the one who wanted to be seen exactly as they were. Now ask yourself quietly, what did that child need most? Safety, affection, validation, consistency, encouragement, freedom, protection? Now ask, did they receive it consistently? For many of us, the answer is complicated because most caregivers did the best they could with what they had. But doing their best does not always mean our needs were fully met. And unmet needs don't disappear. They go underground. They become emotional imprints. They become protective strategies. They become your adult triggers. This is where the concept of the inner child becomes essential. Your inner child is not a metaphor for weakness. It is the part of you that formed your earliest beliefs about yourself and the world. It is the part that first decided, I must be perfect to be loved. I must not upset anyone. I must take care of others. I must not need too much. I must succeed to be worthy. I must not trust easily. I must handle things alone. These were not conscious choices. They were adaptations. And those adaptations may still be running your life. When your partner criticizes you and you feel disproportionate shame, that's not just about the present moment. When you hesitate to speak up in a meeting, that's not just about confidence. When you overextend financially to impress others, that's not just about spending habits. When you collapse under pressure, that's not just about stress tolerance. Often it is the inner child seeking safety. Here's a powerful truth. Your triggers are invitations to meet the younger parts of you that still need support. Most of us try to silence our triggers. We numb them, we distract from them, we judge them. But triggers are not enemies. They are doorways. They reveal where healing is needed. And healing begins with reparenting. Reparenting means giving yourself today what you did not consistently receive then. It means becoming the safe, attuned, regulated adult your younger self needed. It means saying, I see you. I hear you. You are not too much. Your feelings make sense. I am here now. Many of us are adults externally but abandoned internally. We override our needs. We dismiss our emotions. We push through exhaustion. We tolerate disrespect. We silence our desires. And then we wonder why we feel disconnected because self-abandonment is learned early. If expressing sadness was inconvenient, you learn to suppress it. If anger was punished, you learn to swallow it. If joy was minimized, you learn to contain it. But suppression is not healing, it is survival. Reparenting asks you to do something radical. Pause when triggered. Pause when triggered. Instead of reacting outwardly, turn inward. Ask, what does this part of me need right now? Maybe it needs reassurance. Maybe it needs a boundary. Maybe it needs rest. Maybe it needs courage. Reparenting is not indulgence, it is responsibility. Because no one is coming to finish what was incomplete. And this can feel heavy, but it is also empowering. You are no longer waiting for someone else to validate you. You become the source. Here is a quote I want you to hold close. The moment you stop waiting to be rescued is the moment you reclaim your power. Let's talk about how this connects to financial freedom, because your money patterns often reflect childhood imprints. If love was conditional, you may spend to earn approval. If stability was inconsistent, you may hoard or fear investing. If conflict surrounded finances, you may avoid looking at numbers entirely. If achievement was the only way to receive praise, you may tie your income directly to your worth. The inner child carries these associations, and until you bring awareness to them, they operate unconsciously. Reparenting financially means learning to soothe yourself without impulsive spending, learning to delay gratification without feeling deprived, learning to hold abundance without guilt, learning to set financial boundaries without shame, learning to build security from intention rather than fear. This is emotional maturity. Emotional maturity is not suppressing emotion. It is feeling emotion without being ruled by it. It is being able to say, I feel anxious, and I will still make the aligned decision. I feel afraid, and I will still move forward. I feel triggered, and I will regulate before responding. Reparenting strengthens this capacity. Because instead of collapsing into the emotion, you hold the emotion. Instead of blaming others, you take ownership of your response. Instead of seeking validation externally, you create validation internally, and this builds self-trust. Self-trust is built when your inner child learns. My adult self shows up for me. When you rest instead of pushing through, trust builds. When you speak up instead of shrinking, trust builds. When you save money instead of impulsively spending, trust builds. So, when you follow through on small promises, trust builds, and trust creates safety. Safety creates expansion. Expansion creates freedom. But let's be honest, meeting your inner child is not always gentle. Sometimes it is grief. Grief for what you didn't receive. Grief for the ways you had to grow up too fast. Grief for the times you felt alone. Allow that grief, because grief is not weakness. Grief is integration, and integration is maturity. Here is another reminder. You cannot heal what you refuse to feel. If you bypass your pain in pursuit of productivity, it will surface in other ways, in burnout, in resentment, in sabotage, in disconnection. Reparenting requires slowing down long enough to feel, to witness, to validate. You may sit quietly and remember moments you dismissed. You may journal letters to your younger self. You may notice patterns repeating in your adult relationships that mirror early dynamics. This is not about blaming caregivers. It is about understanding patterns. Because once you understand the origin, you stop personalizing the present. You stop saying, I'm crazy, and start saying, this makes sense. And when things make sense, they lose their shame. Shame thrives in silence. Healing thrives in awareness. As you practice reparenting, you may notice something profound. You become less reactive. Because instead of your inner child running the show, your regulated adult self steps forward. You pause. You breathe. You respond intentionally. This is leadership. Leadership in relationships, leadership in business, leadership in finances, leadership in your own life. True independence is not detachment. It is self-support. And when you support yourself emotionally, you stop demanding others fill that role. You stop overextending. You stop over-explaining. You stop overperforming. You begin choosing. Choosing aligned relationships. Choosing sustainable growth. Choosing boundaries, choosing expansion without self-betrayal. Here is a final quote for this part. Reparenting is the practice of becoming the safe place you once searched for. You are not erasing your past. You are integrating it. You are honoring the child who survived, and those survived. And you are stepping into the adult who leads. In part 5, we will move into boundaries, ego stories, and emotional maturity. How to show up in relationships without repeating old trauma bonds. How to break cycles of overgiving and under-receiving. How to build interdependence instead of codependence. But for now, sit with this. That child within you is not broken. They adapted. And now, you are teaching them something new. You are safe. You are capable. You are worthy. You are becoming. Take a breath. The work is deepening, and so are you. Now we arrive at the part of the work that changes everything, because healing does not happen in isolation. It happens in relationship. Relationship with your partner, with your family, with your colleagues, with money, with success, with yourself. And if your subconscious blueprint was formed in relationship, it will be revealed in relationship. This is where ego stories live. An ego story is a protective narrative you created to survive emotionally. It sounds like, I'm the responsible one. I'm the strong one. I'm the one who doesn't need anyone. I'm the peacemaker. I'm the overachiever. I'm the one who always gets left. I'm bad with money. I'm just anxious. Anxious. Oh, these identities once protected you. If you were praised for being responsible, you leaned into it. If you avoided conflict by being agreeable, you leaned into it. If independence protected you from disappointment, you leaned into it. Over time, these strategies crystallized into identity. And identity feels permanent. But here's the truth. The ego story is not who you are. It is who you became to feel safe. The ego is not evil. It is protective. It says, never be too vulnerable. Never need too much. Never risk rejection. Never slow down. Never fail. Never fail. But the ego also limits intimacy, limits expansion, limits authenticity. Because if you are always the strong one, who holds you? If you are always the achiever, who are you without performance? If you are always the independent one, can you truly receive support? Emotional maturity begins when we question our ego stories, not to shame them, but to loosen their grip. Maturity means I can feel hurt without attacking. I can feel fear without controlling. I can feel uncertainty without collapsing. I can hear feedback without crumbling. I can set boundaries without guilt. And boundaries are where many people struggle because boundaries were not modeled. If you grew up in a household where emotions were explosive, you may equate boundaries with conflict. If you grew up in a household where love was conditional, you may equate boundaries with rejection. If you grew up needing approval to feel safe, you may equate boundaries with abandonment. So instead of setting them, you overextend. You overgive. You overexplain. You tolerate misalignment. And slowly resentment builds. Resentment is a sign of self-abandonment. Let me say that clearly. Resentment is the body's signal that you are betraying yourself. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you fracture self-trust. Every time you stay silent to keep peace, you teach your nervous system that your needs are secondary. Every time you over-deliver to earn validation, you reinforce the belief that your worth is conditional. Boundaries are not walls. They are clarity. They say, this is what I will accept. This is what I will not. This is what I need. This is what I value. And here's the key. A boundary is about your behavior, not controlling someone else's. Instead of, you need to stop doing that, it becomes, if this continues, I will step away. Boundaries protect your energy, your time, your finances, your emotional capacity. And emotional maturity is the ability to tolerate the discomfort that boundaries create. Because when you start setting boundaries, some people will resist, and not because you're wrong, but because your change disrupts their comfort. And this is where growth becomes real, because growth often requires disappointing people who benefited from your self-abandonment. Let that sit. Growth requires tolerating discomfort. You cannot build an aligned life while prioritizing everyone else's emotional reaction. Now let's connect this to financial empowerment. Boundaries are essential for financial freedom. If you cannot say no, you will overcommit your time. If you cannot negotiate, you will under-earn. If you cannot tolerate discomfort, you will avoid necessary conversations. If you tie worth to approval, you will price yourself for validation instead of value. Financial maturity is emotional maturity expressed through money. It means spending intentionally instead of impulsively, investing strategically instead of fearfully, saying no to financial obligations that drain you, charging what aligns instead of what feels safe, separating your self-worth from your net worth. And this requires breaking ego stories. If your ego story says, I'm bad with money, you will unconsciously confirm it. If your ego story says, I must overwork to be secure, you will burn out. If your ego story says, I don't deserve more, you will cap yourself. But ego stories dissolve under awareness. You begin noticing, oh, I overcommit because I fear rejection. Oh, I avoid negotiation because I fear conflict. Oh, I overspend because I'm soothing anxiety. Oh, I overwork because rest feels unsafe, and awareness gives you choice. You don't immediately become perfect. You become conscious. Conscious enough to pause. Conscious enough to regulate. conscious enough to choose differently. So, here's another truth. Emotional maturity is the ability to stay connected to yourself while in connection with others. Not losing yourself, not shrinking, not dominating, not withdrawing, staying grounded. When someone is upset, you regulate instead of absorbing. When someone disagrees, you listen without collapsing. When someone crosses a boundary, you respond instead of exploding. This is interdependence, not codependence, not hyper-independence. Interdependence says, I can stand on my own and I can connect. I can support myself and I can receive support. Oh, I can honor my needs and respect yours. This is the foundation of healthy relationships, and healthy relationships support growth because you cannot build abundance in isolation from your relational patterns. Your relationship patterns will follow you into business, into leadership, into finances. If you struggle to assert yourself in love, you may struggle to assert yourself in negotiations. If you avoid conflict in family dynamics, you may avoid conflict in financial decisions. If you tie worth to performance, you may tie income to burnout. Everything is connected. Holistic healing means understanding that your internal patterns shape your external outcomes. And as you mature emotionally, you stop asking, why are they doing this to me? And start asking, how am I participating in this dynamic? Not from blame, from empowerment. Because when you see your participation, you see your power, and power means choice. Choice means freedom. Freedom means responsibility. Here is a quote to anchor this part. Boundaries are the bridge between self-respect and self-trust. Without boundaries, self-trust erodes. With boundaries, self-trust strengthens. And self-trust changes your entire life. You stop chasing validation. You stop over-explaining. You stop tolerating misalignment. You begin choosing relationships that feel reciprocal, opportunities that feel aligned, financial decisions that feel intentional. Wow. And that is maturity, not perfection, not emotional numbness, grounded, regulated self-leadership. In part 6, we will bring everything together: consciousness, subconscious rewiring, nervous system safety, inner child healing, boundaries, emotional maturity. We will talk about integration, about building a life from alignment, about sustaining transformation, about becoming the architect of your future financially, emotionally, spiritually. But for now, reflect. Where am I abandoning myself? Where am I afraid to set boundaries? What ego story am I still protecting? Because once you see it, you are no longer trapped by it. Take a breath. You are not here to remain in survival. You are here to evolve. And evolution requires courage. Take a breath. Because this is where everything comes together. Awareness, the subconscious blueprint, the nervous system, the inner child, boundaries, emotional maturity. All of it has been leading here, not to a perfect version of you, but to an integrated one. Most people want transformation without integration. They want the breakthrough, the clarity, the motivation, the inspiration. But real change is quieter. It is built in ordinary moments. The moment you pause instead of react, the moment you speak up instead of shrink, the moment you rest instead of overwork, the moment you save instead of impulse spend, the moment you regulate instead of spiral. Integration is when your awareness becomes embodied, when your knowledge becomes lived. When your healing becomes visible in your behavior. Here is the truth. You do not rise to the level of your intentions. You rise to the level of your regulation. You can intend to change. You can intend to grow. You can intend to grow. You can intend to build wealth. You can intend to create healthy relationships. But if your nervous system is dysregulated, if your inner child feels unsafe, if your ego story is still driving the wheel, your intentions will collapse under pressure. Integration means your internal world and external choices align. You stop knowing what to do and start doing what you know. Let's talk about discipline. Discipline is often misunderstood as force. But true discipline is self-respect in action. It is choosing the future you want over the comfort you're used to. It is not punishment. It is protection. Protection of your energy. Protection of your peace. Protection of your potential. And here is a powerful reframe. A discipline is remembering who you are becoming. When you wake up early to build your vision, you are honoring your future self. When you regulate before reacting, you are honoring your future relationships. When you invest instead of avoid, you are honoring your future security. When you say no to what drains you, you are honoring your future capacity. Financial freedom, emotional maturity, and nervous system safety are not separate paths. They are the same path expressed in different areas of your life. Because financial freedom is not just about income. It is about sovereignty. Sovereignty over your time, over your energy, over your choices, over your nervous system. If you cannot regulate under pressure, money will magnify your dysregulation. If you cannot set boundaries, success will exhaust you. If you cannot tolerate discomfort, growth will feel threatening. Wealth does not create emotional stability. Emotional stability creates sustainable wealth. Let that land, your ability to sit with discomfort, to delay gratification, to regulate through uncertainty, to trust yourself, to act intentionally. These are wealth principles. Here are the foundational principles of true financial freedom. Self-trust precedes strategy. If you don't trust yourself, no strategy will feel safe. Regulation precedes risk. You cannot make empowered decisions from panic. Clarity precedes growth. Know your values before chasing outcomes. Boundaries precede sustainability. If you leak energy, you leak money. Identity precedes income. You will only earn to the level your self-image allows, and identity is built through repetition. Every time you follow through, you shift identity. Every time you regulate instead of react, you shift identity. Every time you honor your needs, you shift identity. Identity is not declared. It is practiced. Now let's talk about fear, because fear will not disappear. You will feel fear when you set a boundary, raise your prices, leave a misaligned relationship, start something new, invest in yourself, choose differently than your family did. Fear is not a sign to stop. It is a sign you are expanding, but expansion without regulation leads to collapse. So you expand gradually. You stretch, then stabilize. Stretch, then stabilize. This is sustainable transformation. Not all or nothing, not extreme overhauls. Small, consistent upgrades, that glass of water, that morning breath, that boundary, that journal entry, that saved dollar, that paused reaction. These are not small things. They are identity shifts. Here's a quote I want to anchor this final chapter. Your future is built on the quiet decisions you make when no one is watching. Not the big announcements, not the social media declarations, the quiet discipline, the self-regulation, the intentional choice. And let's address something important. There will be days you regress, days you react, days you overspend, days you abandon a boundary, days you numb, days you avoid. That does not erase your progress. Healing is not linear. Growth is not perfect. The difference now is awareness. Before you were unconscious. Now you notice. And noticing shortens the spiral. You return faster. And that return builds resilience. Resilience is wealth. Resilience is maturity. Resilience is freedom. Now I want you to imagine something. Imagine yourself 1 year from now. Not a fantasy version, a regulated version. A version who pauses before reacting, speaks clearly, manages money intentionally, holds boundaries calmly, chooses aligned relationships, invests in growth. Rests without guilt. Acts with self-trust. That version is not created by a breakthrough. That version is created by repetition, daily conscious repetition. You are not here to become someone else. You are here to become consistent. Consistent in self-respect. Consistent in regulation. Consistent in alignment, because consistency compounds. Just like money compounds, small deposits become wealth. Small habits become identity, small shifts become transformation, and eventually you wake up one day and realize you are no longer surviving. You are leading your emotions, leading your nervous system, leading your finances, leading your relationships, not perfectly, but consciously, and that is freedom. Freedom is not the absence of responsibility. Freedom is the capacity to respond intentionally. Freedom is not the absence of fear. Freedom is movement with awareness. Freedom is not external validation. Freedom is internal alignment. Let me leave you with this. You are not broken. You are patterned. You are not powerless. You are unconscious. You are unconscious. You are not incapable. You are dysregulated. You are not stuck. You are repeating. And now you are aware. Awareness leads to responsibility. Responsibility leads to discipline. Discipline leads to identity. Identity leads to transformation. Transformation leads to freedom. The work does not end here. It begins here. Every morning you wake up, you choose again. Every trigger is an opportunity. Every discomfort is a teacher. Every boundary is a declaration. Every financial decision is an alignment. You are the architect now, not your past, not your trauma, not your conditioning, not your ego story. You. And here is the final quote I want you to carry with you. Healing is not about fixing yourself. It is about leading yourself. Lead yourself gently. Lead yourself firmly. Lead yourself consistently. And watch what changes. Take one last breath. Slow exhale. You are not waiting anymore. You are building, and that changes everything.